Okay. Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. Well, big subject. God's plan for salvation. Well, first of all, it might be a good idea to consider what the word salvation means. You throw it around a lot. God's plan for salvation. Well, salvation is going to mean something to you, right? It's not salvation hanging out in the ethers. It's something that will be an experience. And at the bottom line, salvation means you never having to strive to become anything anymore. It means you not being behind the 8 ball anymore. It means you never having to try to be right. It means you never having to prove anything. Salvation is the experience of you being in your right mind. And knowing it. It means you being in your right mind, never again subject to doubt or the invitation to discouragement. It means you at peace and being able to be from your peace in all respects. Salvation is the absence of fear, the total, complete absence of fear. It's you being able to be whole, to be wholly involved in being. Where there's no reservation of any part of yourself that you're keeping safe from threat. Where the saying is really true, what you see is what you get. Because what everyone will see will be you wholly present, without reservation, without withholding yourself in any way. Salvation is the unobscured experience of safety. which is another way of saying it is the direct experience of omnipotence. Not power over anything, but the presence of wholeness that finds no threat, no suggestion of threat, nothing unlike itself. It is the experience of utter peace and utter safety. So what is God's plan for this experience for you? Is it a plan He had to come up with? Or is the plan for your salvation simply the way things are? The way things unalterably are. That you are simply going to let yourselves back into the experience of. Remember, you're not advancing toward your salvation. You're not advancing toward your perfection. You're not improving yourselves in order to earn salvation. But you have these imaginative ideas that you have come up with and that others have provided to you. That you are not already there. You're not already at the point of perfection. And so you operate not on the basis of the way things are, but on the basis of the way you think things are, period. Your salvation lies in abandoning the way you think things are, so that you might yield into the way things are. In other words, the way God has set it up. The way God is being it / you at every moment. So that you let go of the something extra that you've added to the equation. Salvation is yours. Salvation is already yours. And what all of this is that we've been talking about amounts to your yielding to it, your yielding into it, your relaxing into it. God's plan for salvation is utter simplicity. Let's go into the book. You have been told not to make error real. And the way to do this is very simple. If you want to believe in error, you would have to make it real. Because it is not true. In other words, because it is not real. So if you want to believe in error, you would have to make it real, because it is not true. But truth is real in its own right. And to believe in truth, you do not have to do anything. If you want to believe in error, you would have to do something. You would have to engage in acts that attempt to make it real so that you would have something to believe in. And the reason is that it doesn't exist in its own right. Now, understand that you do not respond to stimuli, but to stimuli as you interpret them. Your interpretation thus becomes the justification for the response, whatever that response might be. You do not respond to stimuli, but to stimuli as you interpret them. Well, that's what all of the mutually agreed upon definitions are. The interpretations of reality that you've come up with. And the mutually agreed upon definitions that you operate according to become the justifications for your responses. And so as a result, you are very seldom original with a brother or a sister, with each other. You're always doing this two-step, bouncing off of each other, so as to be able to do things but not violate the mutually agreed upon definitions, the interpretations that have been placed between you and reality itself. That is why analyzing the motives of others is hazardous to you. Naturally, it's not the most comfortable thing for the ones you're analyzing, but analyzing the motives of others is hazardous to you. If you decide that someone is really trying to attack you, or desert you, or enslave you, you will respond as if he had actually done so, because you have made his error real to you. To interpret error is to give it power, and having done this, you will overlook truth. This is really quite obvious and really quite simple. However you perceive your brother, however you interpret his actions and him, will govern how you're going to behave toward him. And if your interpretation of your brother or of his actions takes precedence over an actual connection with him, then you are operating in a fantasy. You are in imagination land. And you're out of touch. You're not connected. You're unable to be real, appropriate, pertinent. And you're going to trip and fall flat on your face. And you're going to wonder why. You don't usually run into problems until you have to relate to your brothers and sisters, right? If you're on a mountaintop all by yourself or on a deserted beach all by yourself, you can be there without any problems. But let there be one other person who comes along, and there is the potential for them to behave in a way that is offensive to you or distracting to you or bothersome to you. And the problem begins. Why? Because you must be involved. And you don't know how to be involved with your brothers and sisters. Now, you may argue with me and say, I sure do. And I get along with them well, and I have good working relationships. I am, along with others, able to be quite productive and am able to help others be productive. But what you don't understand is that if you are not gathering your perception of your brother from a prior connectedness with truth, you are operating in the realm of imagination land. And so although all of you are being able to function together with very little friction, you are not in touch with the truth. And you haven't learned how to be with your brother rightly. You haven't learned how to be with your brother from your right mind. A real connection with what is really there where your brother is. The analysis of ego motivation, which is what all of you do when you look at your brothers and sisters, you evaluate where they're coming. I wonder where she's coming from. She's behaving in such and such a way. She must have blah, 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 blah. And you come up with an imaginary assessment. And then you approach her on the basis of that assessment. The analysis of ego motivation is very complicated, very obscuring. Obscuring of what? Of the truth. Your imagination obscures the truth when you give preference to what you have imagined. The analysis of ego motivation is very complicated, very obscuring, and never without the risk of your own ego involvement. The whole process represents a clear-cut attempt to demonstrate your own ability to understand what you perceive. See? Instead of a joint understanding of what you perceive, which you have when you abandon your independence, your autonomy, and you say, Father or Holy Spirit, what's really going on here? What do I need to know here? What is really going on? So that you might respond on the basis of a joined clarity. The whole process represents a clear-cut attempt to demonstrate your own, and I'm going to say independent ability, to understand what you perceive. This is shown by the fact that you react to your interpretations as if they were correct, and control your reactions behaviorally, but not emotionally. What does that mean? It means that even though you come up with your own conclusions, and they're false, and they are disturbing to you, you, for the most part, control your behavior, and you don't behave consistent with the perception you have. But when it comes to your emotions, oh boy, do they go wild. And in your head, you concoct stories. You concoct scenarios about your brother's behavior and what you can expect and what they're likely to do. And the longer you do this, the angrier you get. And you know what? You haven't even had your first word with this person for the day. So, you control your reactions behaviorally, but not emotionally. This is quite evidently a mental split in which you have attacked the integrity of your mind and pitted one level within it against another. See, you're going to control yourself properly here, but you're not going to control yourself at all here, and so you're attempting to be inconsistent within yourself. And that's called the human condition. You also do this with the world. You do this with spiders and snakes and centipedes and butterflies and hummingbirds. A hummingbird comes along, and there's no fear in you. And you stand very still in hopes that it will stay in your vicinity and maybe get really close so you can look at it. But you see a spider or a wasp or a snake, and whether it's going to do anything to you or not, whether it even cares whether you're there or not, you go through great fear, and a sweat will break out. Fear will reign. Why? Because of the interpretation you have about the spider or the snake or the wasp. So you're reacting to your own interpretation. You're off in la-la land again, imagination land. But you know what? You're putting your body through all of the responses that would be called for, we'll say, if indeed there was a threat. And you know what? When you live your life this way, you wear yourself out unconsciously, simply because you're constantly on guard one way or another all day long. Now, the next section is called the judgment of the Holy Spirit. There is but one interpretation of all motivation that makes any sense. They were talking about simplicity. And because it is the Holy Spirit's judgment, it requires no effort. It requires no effort at all on your part. Here it is. Here's the Holy Spirit's judgment. Every loving thought is true. Everything else is an appeal for healing and help. That is what it is, regardless of the form it takes. There are only two things going on in your behavior or in your brother's behavior. Every loving thought is true. Every loving thought you have is real and eternal. Everything else you or your brother engages in is an appeal for help, is an appeal for healing and help. That's why it's said that everything is either love or a call for love. Can anyone be justified in responding with anger to a plea for help? No response can be appropriate except the willingness to give it to him. For this and only this is what he is asking for. So if your brother is behaving, or sister, in a way that isn't obviously love, then they are engaging in what you can imaginatively call bad behavior, a call for correction. And you, at that point, are faced with a choice. Are you going to react to your perception of them and of their behavior? Oh, they're in a shitty mood. I had better steer clear of them if I don't want to get caught up in a big mess. Or are you going to see it for what it truly is? A call for love, a call for help. And not react angrily. It makes all the difference in the world how you interpret everything you see. And you're going to interpret it in one of those two ways. You're going to recognize it to be the presence of love, something to be grateful for, or a call for love, which is something to be grateful for. Offer him anything else, and you are assuming the right to attack his reality by interpreting it as you see fit. You see, you make your own definition up. And then you behave according to that definition as you see fit. And there's been no connection with that brother. You've inserted between your brother and yourself a picture of him. And then you're reacting to that picture of him, and then you're coming to conclusions as to what is required in order for your picture of him to be pacified, settled down, dealt with. You see? And the problem is that you carry out this response to your very own picture, not where something can be done about it, which is in your own mind, but you attempt to deal with the brother who has made a call for love as though he hasn't made a call for love. And your behavior is recognized to be attack. An absence of communication, an absence of connection, and yet a coercive response from you that doesn't make sense to the one calling for help.